Buenas, buenas, buenas. I'm Vanessa, the host of Chicklit, a podcast where I share my honest reviews of books that I think Latinas, first gens, and women would enjoy. Please subscribe and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, and YouTube at Chicklit Podcast. I have daily YouTube videos where I talk about my daily life and more current personal matters. So if that sounds like something that interests you, you can find that on my YouTube channel as well as my podcast episodes. Please enjoy today's episode on the book Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste. I want to say Celeste Ng, but she's Asian, so I'm sure it's not Celeste, but that E at the end is messing me up. And then I always want to, the last name NG, I want to say Ng, like A-N-G, but going on her website, I saw that her last name is pronounced Ng, like I-N-G. So Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. And this is actually my third time trying to record this episode, and it's fine. I'm not frustrated by it. I know in the past I've been pretty annoyed, but I went to the public area downstairs to try to record. It was just too noisy. There were people in and out, going to the bathroom, the elevator's there, the gym is there, and there were workers there as well. So I was like, this is a public area, and before I start getting pissed off at people in this public area, let me take this private episode elsewhere. You know what I'm saying? So I came up here back to the apartment to record, and I started recording with my headphones, but my mic is connected to the computer when I'm sitting here. It's like it charges it at the same time. It's like connected to like this dock thing. So the long story short is that this episode better be good. It better be good because I'm trying in here. I'm trying hard to make it happen. The author, Celeste Ng, was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Her parents moved from Hong Kong in the late 1960s. Her father was a physicist at NASA, and her mother was a chemist who taught at Cleveland State University. They all moved to Pittsburgh to Shaker Heights, Ohio, where Celeste was involved with the student group on race relations for 3 years and was a co-editor of the school's literary magazine. She graduated from high school in 1998. I was 7 years old. After graduating from high school, she studied English at Harvard University. Then she attended graduate school at University of Michigan, where she earned her Master's of Fine Arts in Writing. There are 338 pages in today's book, and the genres are contemporary adult fiction. The writing style is third person. The narrator often calls one of the main characters Mrs. Richardson, and so it makes it kind of weird, like who is the narrator? Because her name is Elena, and people call her Elena throughout the book, but the narrator several times calls her Mrs. Richardson, but in other times calls her Elena. So it kind of gives this sense of like, who the fuck are you? You know what I'm saying? Like, why are you calling her and showing respect to her by saying Mrs. Richardson and then sometimes saying Elena? Like, it makes you think that maybe the narrator is Pearl. Pearl is the daughter of a mother-daughter duo who is renting out one of Elena's homes in town. And so it's like, who else in the story would call her Mrs. Richardson? Not her children, not Mia, who's a mother and an adult, that she's not going to call her Mrs. Richardson. So it's like, is the narrator Pearl? I don't know. It adds an element of like an unknown to a book that is already creepy in this town, and there's a lot of shadiness going on. So I just wanted to share that the narrator adds to that element. Now let's get into Lo Bueno. It's a little bit of the chisme because it turns out that the town that this book takes place in resembles the town that the author, Celeste, grew up in. It was a planned neighborhood that prioritized inclusivity, high expectations, and doing the right thing. Shaker Heights was founded on the desire for a utopian society. The Shakers, known for their meticulous order and control, believed that by regulating every aspect of life, they could create a perfect haven on earth. And obviously, it's based in religion, but the city, the town, did away with the religion aspect and just really focused on a utopian and being inclusive and like a perfect town. Shaker Heights had rules, many rules about what you could and could not do. Everything from how to write your address to make sure you received your mail, to how to properly call the little strip of grass between the sidewalk and the street. They call it a tree lawn, because in front of every single house there's a Norway maple tree planted in front of it. So it's like, it seems very creepy. Like when you're driving down the street, it's like every house has to follow the same rules. Every house has this little strip with the tree in front of it, certain colors, certain siding, certain this, certain that. It's like, it's a little creepy of like all these rules that they're all following. So it's almost like a uniform thing, which, you know, you go to other towns. Here in Austin, every other house is completely different. It's a millionaire in one house and like homeless people taking over the next one. So it's like, it's not normal to have a town like Shaker Heights where everything is so similar. Like even in Shaker Heights, even the garbage cans were not dragged to that space where the trees are, and instead they're left at the rear of the house to avoid the unsightly spectacle of trash cans cluttering the curb. Large motor scooters, each piloted by a man in an orange worksuit, zip down each driveway to collect the garbage in the privacy of the backyard, ferrying it to the larger truck idling out in the street. The garages were even detached, stationed well at the back of the house, again to preserve the view of the street. An unmowed lawn would result in a polite but stern letter from the city, noting that their grass was over 6 inches tall, and that if the situation was not rectified, the city would mow the grass and charge them $100 in 3 days. It was very intense, and while I think the town was founded, you know, on good intentions, like I was saying, the book does a really good job of showing some of the cons of being so particular and rigid with rules, specifically, and we see it how it shows up in Elena, Lexi, Trip, Moody, and Izzy's mom. She was born and raised in this town, and she aims for perfection, and you really see how that shows up in her parenting and her personality in general, just how she carries herself. I think that her character shows how that mindset can really fuck you up if you're just striving for perfection all day, every day. Let's get into some of Elena's kids, though. Lexi is a senior and bored of her small town life. She has a black boyfriend and lives in her, you know, small, perfect little white town bubble. Trip is a junior, and he's also a man whore. He sleeps with all the girls in town and is very shallow. He brings girls to his one friend's house whose parents are always working or out of town. So he'll hit his friend up through a beeper because it's the 90s, so no one has cell phones, and they'll send each other a code, and like they'll respond through each other's beepers to be like, yeah, you're good, you can go. Like, hey, can I go to your house? And he'll be like, yeah, you can go. And that's just really creepy. Like, that's really like dirtbaggy that he just brings girls to his friend's house and fucks them in the basement. Like, that's a man whore. Like, that's some slutty shit to do, to have a system in place. Then we have Moody. He's a sophomore, and he's also very sensitive and open-minded. He doesn't understand his older siblings, but he gets along with them for the most part. Then there's Izzy. She's a freshman and the black sheep of the family, a wild card. She wears Doc Martens and calls people out on their bullshit. When she was little, she had a dance recital, but sat on the stage and refused to move with the words, "Not your puppet," written across her forehead. In another scene, a teacher treated a student unfairly, I think because she was racist, and Izzy stood up for the student and got in trouble for standing up for her, so she decided to get back at the teacher by jamming all of the locks in the schools so that, just to disrupt the teacher and like piss her off. But she did all of the doors because had she just done the one teacher's door, you would have known like, oh, you just got in trouble yesterday and today my door is jammed. Like, obviously it's you. So instead she does all of the doors and jams them all to just disrupt and create discomfort and shake shit up because the teacher sucked. When the doors were jammed, that same teacher, she, couldn't go to the bathroom, the teacher's lounge, so she had to like stoop below herself and go to the students' bathroom, and she ended up peeing herself before making it to the toilet. And so Izzy's plan goes a lot better than she ever planned. Like, she did not plan for that to happen, but it happens, and it like goes down in history. So Izzy is just a disruptor and she's not with the shit. When the older two siblings, Trip and Lexi, talk shit about Izzy, Moody often stands up for her because, you know, she's just the baby and she doesn't understand. She's just misunderstood, kind of. Like, we love Moody and Izzy from the beginning, and you also feel bad for Izzy too, because while also being proud, like, yes, I obviously agree with all of her stances and stuff, but it's sad that she's so young and so angry, and like, I found myself throughout the book hoping that this fictional character would be calmer and happier, because I know what that feels like. I know what being so angry and feeling caged, and like, her mom is so tough on her, and we find out that it's because during her pregnancy and delivery, she had complications, and so Elena was always hyper vigilant of Izzy, and she was always tough on her, making sure that she was okay and thriving and doing the right thing and not showing any signs of any, you know, sicknesses that could have come from the complications. So it just shows how that perfect image, or Elena's thoughts on perfection, shows up in the way that she mothers specifically Izzy, who goes against the grain. Like, had Elena prioritized her daughter's wants and her skills, her strengths, she wouldn't be trying to force Izzy to be someone else. Like, at one point she throws away her Doc Martens and she judges her on her clothing and the things that she says to people, because, you know, Elena wants to be perfect, and then here her daughter is like a disruptor of everything. So it's they butt heads a lot, is the point. I feel it. And also, if you notice, each kid is 1 year apart: senior, junior, sophomore, freshman. So it just adds to that like Stepford Wives type of town and life that Elena has. Her husband's a lawyer, and it's just like too perfect. It's too perfect. Honestly, it's creepy. The book actually starts off with the family watching their home burn down to the ground, which is one of the last events of the book. So we spend the whole book wondering, you know, going from the opening scene, the house burning down, to like the past. Like, how did we get here? How do we get to this point of your house burning down? We want to know who did it, how they did it, why they did it. Like, we need to find these things out. Eventually, a woman comes into town, Mia, and her daughter, Pearl, and they start renting out Elena's second home. Elena rented the downstairs to a nice gentleman from Hong Kong, and that made me wonder if the author Celeste wrote that character, that downstairs neighbor, to reflect her dad. Her dad passed in 2004, and the book came out 10 years later in 2014, so it makes me kind of wonder if she wrote her dad into the story kind of a little bit. I don't know. That's my thought. Or maybe it was just because she was familiar. I don't know. Elena felt that the kind of tenant mattered most when it comes to renting out the home. It wasn't about the money or the like collecting rent. She wanted to help people who she felt was deserving so that she could do good in the world. Like, and that is insane to me, because how can you, I know that she's the owner of the home and she determines who rents her home, but to place value on people and to say that they are deserving of your kindness because, you know, the man is an immigrant and struggling and she's a single mom. Like, it's the fact that she places herself in a position of authority to claim that they are deserving. Like, I really want to know who the fuck's not deserving. I want to know who's not deserving. Because if we look at that, if we look at who's not deserving, she's going to say crazy shit. It's hard to put into words, and I know that it's my job with this podcast to put it into words, to express myself, but you know what I'm saying? Like, how, like me, I don't have any kids, I'm a single woman, I don't have any kids, and I have a podcast. So does that mean that you wouldn't rent your home out to me? You know, or if, like, she says at one point that Mia is well-spoken, she's a black woman, and, like, that's fucking racist. Like, to claim that a black woman is well-spoken implies that there's a difference and that you're noticing that she's well-spoken, and why? Because black people aren't well-spoken. So it just adds this, like, covert, behind-the-scene transgression, micro-transgression, these biases. It's so subtle. It's so subtle, and it really pisses me off, and that's why it's so hard to articulate why it's so fucked up that this woman who does have a position of authority, she owns a home and she's renting it out, how the fact that she's just deciding who's deserving or not, it's absurd. It just grinds my gears, and it like gives me like an itch. And throughout the book, we do start to see her biases come out, and how Elena actually uses these good deeds that she does to keep the score and cash in those points when she needs it most to get what she wants. Like at one point she has this friend and she's so close with her, and she throws it in her face that she's her friend and she wants her to do a favor. So her friend feels like she has to do a favor, and that's not why you do good deeds. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't do good deeds so that you can brag about it and talk about it and use it to make themselves look good. And so, when I talk about teaching, like, I never want to come off as this saviorism, saving these kids and stuff like that. And like, anytime I've done a good deed, I don't post about it. I don't put it on Instagram. I don't talk about it. And actually, my good friend from high school, we were friends for like 10 years, she would tell me, like, she's like, I get what you're saying. Like, I understand why you're not boasting about it, but she's like, but you're way too humble as well. Like, I take it to the other extreme, where it's like, I see so many people like Elena who's like, yeah, I'm renting my second home out to this single black mother and her daughter because she's a struggling artist. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, she's doing it to stroke her ego, and I see people do that, and I want to be the opposite. I don't want that to be me. I don't. When Elena is telling the family about her new tenants, Moody was intrigued by Pearl, and she was apparently very bright, so Moody wanted to go meet her. He fell in love with her immediately. It was love at first sight. He felt like he always knew her, when they went into their home, he realized just how poor they were. They didn't have a couch. They just had pillows there with like a sheet over them to shape a lounging area where the couch would go. Mia, the mom, didn't have a bed frame. Her mattress was on the floor. Moody couldn't believe people could be so poor. Like, the narrator says that in the book. For Mia and Pearl, though, they traveled from city to city, getting inspiration for Mia to make art. Once she completed a project, they would move on to another city, so all of their belongings had to fit into their small car. This worked for them. They were minimalist, they had different priorities, and so Moody had that realization, and like, they were opening his eyes up to just a different way of living, because all these people are born and raised in Shaker Heights, so they don't know anything outside of this perfection, this perfect little city. Apparently, though, Mia told Pearl that this time was different, that they would not be leaving after her project, and they would stay there for good. So from the very beginning, we know that that's not going to happen. Like, the vibe of the book is not this happy-go-lucky, like, oh, everything's going to work out. Like, it's not like that. It's very tense. It's very race-driven. And you can just tell from the very beginning, the first interactions between Elena and Mia, that they are fucking gonna leave. They're not gonna make it. They're not gonna be able to stay there for a year. Even though the whole city wants to be this inclusive thing, but it's like, it just goes to show the behind the scenes microaggressions that make it impossible for these types of things to exist. But Moody obviously loves Pearl, so he invites her to her house, and Pearl is amazed with how big their house is, how beautiful it is, and how perfect everything seems. You get the feeling that Pearl is getting that sense of belonging with the family. There are so many siblings, a big house, both parents, so she starts going over almost every day after school, getting to know all of Elena's kids. And they liked having her around too, because it was someone else to interact with outside of the siblings and parents. And she was black and like from a different town, so it was like just a different, someone new, you know what I'm saying? Someone new to mix things up. So it just worked with all parties involved that Pearl was now an active member of their family. Eventually, Trip, the man whore, starts to take interest in Pearl, and Pearl, having found this new sense of safety and confidence in the town, she starts to like Trip back too. She never once was into Moody. Moody was into her, and maybe if Pearl had stayed in her hippie little bubble with her mom, she would have gotten with Moody eventually, but because she joined the Richardsons' household and got this new sense of self, she was maturing, and Trip was into her because she was, new and different, and saw him past his womanizing ways. they actually connected and had conversations outside of just having sex in his friend's basement. So I don't think Trip ever had been taken seriously before Pearl. So they really start to like each other, and obviously they're having sex the whole time. Like, they're teenagers, they're curious. Eventually, Elena asks Mia to clean their home and cook dinners, and Mia's the mom. I don't know if you can keep track. I don't know if it's confusing. But Elena asks Mia to clean their home and cook dinners during the week in exchange for rent. So Elena was so busy with her journalism career, and Mia was a struggling artist, so it kind of made sense. But you knew something bad was going to happen. You just knew it was going to happen. Because Mia is skeptical and not giving into the whole nice white landlord image that Elena is trying to give off. So Mia's more experienced than that to take white people at face value. She knew and was on edge the entire time that something was going to give. Something's going to happen. Like, you could tell. She just wasn't giving in to her and feeding into it. While Mia is at their house cooking and cleaning every day, she gets close to Izzy, the black sheep of the family, because they have that similar spark and empathy for people, and they both go to the beat of their own drummer. I think that's what that saying is. So, you know, one day when Mia's there cleaning or cooking or whatever, she hears Lexi talking about how one of Elena's friends is adopting a Chinese baby that was left at the fire station. It turns out that Mia knows the birth mother of the baby and tells the woman that she found her baby, and that the birth mother ends up suing the adoptive parents to get custody of her kid now that she has a job and housing, and she's no longer, you know, she was going through postpartum depression. She couldn't feed the baby. The baby wasn't latching. The baby was crying constantly. She didn't have money for diapers or formula, so she just, out of desperation, left her at the fire station. The whole town goes down this path of debating the ethics of adoption. If women were paid a livable wage, if childcare were affordable, if housing were affordable, if immigrants were aware of the social services available to them, then that birth mother would have never gotten so desperate to stop her daughter's suffering and screaming, and she wouldn't have had to leave her at the station. And I think that this is a really good point in the episode to advocate that all men take their family leave when they become fathers. If all men took off of work to be with their family when they had kids, then jobs wouldn't view time off to care for newborns as a woman's duty. And women wouldn't be penalized or fired from jobs or stopped from being promoted if men took that leave, if men participated more in their children's lives, if men were taking off work to take their kids to the doctors, but they don't. It's women. Women do it. So they're the ones that get penalized. They're the ones that get in trouble. And at their yearly review, they're like, oh no, you took off 12 days this year. You know, sick days, so, you know, that's a negative. It's like, yeah, because my husband's not doing any of them. I could have just been 6, but he's not doing any. So I had to do all 12. So it's just, I want to highlight that this came up not only with the birth mom, but also in Elena too, because her career as a journalist wasn't able to get as popular as her peers because she was like still being a parent and being the primary parent while her husband was becoming a lawyer and a partner in the lawyer. So it's like you see the dynamic and how it affects a wide range of people. This perfect rich lady and this poor immigrant single woman who, in both instances, the men were not stepping up, and so everything fell back on them. So this book is so complex in terms of what it's like to be a woman and like a mother. And I really appreciated that. I'll get more into that in a second. Okay, so anyways, Lexi, the oldest perfect daughter, could never understand why a mother would leave her kid at the fire station. And we know it's because she's privileged and she doesn't know what life is like outside of her perfect little bubble until she finds herself pregnant. She jokingly tells her boyfriend that she daydreams about having his kids, and he freaks out about how his life would be ruined and his parents would hate him for allowing that to happen. So she decides to have an abortion. She never tells him that she was pregnant and just goes and has an abortion. And once she has that abortion, she then changes her mind on adoption. She thinks that the birth mother should have been better supported, and a mom has to do what she has to do just to make it in general. It took her finding herself in a compromising situation for her to have empathy for others. While Lexi is going through the motions of being pregnant and telling her boyfriend and getting an abortion. By the way, when she gets an abortion, she puts her name is Pearl's name. Because she's like, oh, no, I'm in town. Everyone knows my mom. Like, I can't let anyone know that I'm getting an abortion. And Pearl's like, all right, whatever. I don't care. So Lexi's going through those motions. And Mia is cooking and cleaning for the Richardsons' house. And Elena is spending her time digging into Mia's life, trying to see why they live their lives moving city to city, trying to find out who Pearl's dad is and figure out where Mia came from. Elena goes so far as to lie about a business trip so that she can go to another city where Mia's parents live, so she can continue to lie and pretend to be a reporter writing a piece on athletes' lives who have gotten cut short by tragedy because Mia's brother had died in high school. And so Elena is talking to Mia's parents and finds out that Mia was a surrogate for a wealthy couple who couldn't get pregnant because the wife wasn't born with any reproductive organs. Mia's scholarship fund got cut, so she needed the cash. So she figured she could be a surrogate for this very nice rich couple who would then give her money so that she could pay for her school. So it was like perfect setup. But this was before surrogacy was even a thing. So she went to their house and they used a turkey baster so that she could become pregnant with the husband's sperm. Mia's parents didn't approve of it and she ran away. And that's why they're currently estranged. Mia decided to keep the baby from the couple. And I think it's because her brother died and now her parents weren't a part of her life. So the baby, Pearl, was her only family at that point. So she kept her and lied to the couple saying that she lost the baby, like the baby, she miscarried, when in reality she didn't miscarry and she stole the baby, which it depends on what you think. It depends on your opinion if she stole the baby. I feel like she signed up and she agreed that she would be the surrogate, so I kind of feel like she stole the baby. There was no legal papers. It was before surrogacy was even a thing, and so I guess maybe technically she didn't. It's her own body, her own egg, but even egg donors, it's like you signed up to donate the egg, so that baby's no longer yours. You consented to that. But it's like I feel like she consented to that out of a point of desperation, and so that's when you do things out of desperation, you're giving up your consent. Like, you're willing to give up what you want and your consent for desperation. Similarly, that is why Mia felt the need to tell the birth mom of that baby that Elena's friends were adopting the baby, because she knew what it was like to be at a point of desperation, just like the birth mother. She was at a point of desperation when her baby was in extreme pain, not eating, starving, dirty. She couldn't take care of it, so she gave it up. And so it's like Mia knows what that's like when you're at a point of desperation of needing to have your college paid for, and then you give up your consent and you regret it. Like, Mia regretted it. That's why she kept the baby. She regretted signing away her egg and her pregnancy and her, she felt like it was her baby. She regretted giving that consent, so she decided to tell the lady about it. So Elena, that pisses like Elena off, and that fuels, this whole feud that's happening, and the feud's happening behind the scenes, right? Like, Elena's not telling her and having a conversation with her. She's going to her parents' house to find out more about Mia. It's very scary, honestly, the way that she uses her power to do this thing. It's very uncomfortable to watch and read. And I can't imagine what it would be like to navigate any of these scenarios. Being Mia, who can't afford college and feels like she has to birth a child for a couple for money so she can go to college. Like, I've never been to that point of desperation, but people do, right? The couple that Mia was the surrogate for, I can't imagine. What if I found out that I couldn't have kids, I wasn't born with organs, at a time when surrogacy was not a thing? Like, what do? You would do that. You would ask a college kid that needs money, like, hey, we kind of look alike, like, can you can you get pregnant with my husband's sperm? Like, maybe. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe I would. I can't imagine being Elena's friends who struggled with infertility for years. I think in the book they said that the woman had 7 miscarriages. I can't imagine one, let alone 7, time after time. And like, they had been trying to adopt and they weren't able to adopt. And then finally this baby's left at the fire station. And finally they get this baby. And then now the birth mom is like, oh no, sorry, I regret giving her up. I want her back. I can't imagine that. And I can't imagine the birth mom either, being so poor and so depressed and struggling so hard that you leave your baby in the middle of the winter at the fire station. I can't imagine. I can't imagine any of those situations. I can't imagine being in any of those places. And I could go in and debate the ethics of every single one, but I'm too much of like an empath to really be judging people like that. I can't. And so shit really hits the fan when Elena, like I mentioned earlier, she goes to the clinic to ask for her friend to break the laws and show Elena the abortion record, because she thought that the birth mom had gotten pregnant again and had an abortion, and she was trying to help her friend find that out. But while she was finding it out, she saw that Pearl had an abortion, but really it's her daughter, which obviously she doesn't find out. So shit hits the fan. Elena goes home and Moody's like, yeah, like it was Pearl got pregnant and she had an abortion because Moody was pissed that Pearl and Trip were sleeping together. Izzy is watching this all happen and she's like, wait, I remember Lexi being super fucked up a couple weeks ago. Like, I think it was her that had the abortion. So Izzy's piecing the real stuff together, figuring out what's really happening, while Elena is not having conversations and is just trying to figure it out on her own and building this story, creating this story and running with it in her head. So she goes to Mia's house and calls her out on her shit. On her bad parenting, her lies, stealing the baby from the couple. And so Mia, obviously being the like hippie and like on the road person that she is, they abruptly pack up their things and leave. When Izzy finds out, like, she thinks that they left because of her family, because Lexi was using Pearl as like a pawn to like be cool. Trip was taking advantage of her even though he wasn't taking advantage of her, and Moody had betrayed Pearl by sharing her secret with their mom that she was sleeping with Trip. And you know, Izzy's dad was the lawyer for the adoptive parents against, you know, the birth mom, and obviously Izzy was against that. And her mom was the root cause of all of these issues. And she remembers in this time when Mia was trying to say bye to her without telling her that she was leaving. She was just like trying to be like coy about it. And Mia was saying something like, you know, sometimes you have to burn everything down and start fresh. And Lizzie took that literally, being the rambunctious teen that she was, and she decided to burn her own house down. She put little fires everywhere in every room in the house and burned that bitch down. The end. That's the story. And also the birth mom does go into the adoptive parents' home when the judge decided that the adoptive parents could keep the baby. The birth mom goes in, breaks into the house, and steals the baby and flies to China, never to be found again. So it's like absurd. That is also fucked up. Like, there's just it's so complex. It's so hard to get into the ethics of everything. Because all of these scenarios are like super extreme. But I really want to get into how the book talks about motherhood and describing it. At one point, I think the narrator was saying, and maybe it was through Elena, the narrator was saying through Elena's view that to a parent, or no, it was Mia. It was through Mia's view when Mia was talking about the birth mom. She was describing what it's like to be a parent. So this is what Mia was saying. To a parent, your child wasn't just a person. Your child was a place, a kind of Narnia, a vast eternal place where the present you were once living and the past you remembered and the future you longed for all existed at once. You could see it every time you looked at her, your kid. Layered in her face was the baby she'd been and the child she'd become and the adult she would grow up to be, and you saw them all simultaneously like a 3D image. It made your head spin. It was a place you could take refuge if you knew how to get in. And each time you left it, each time your child passed out of your sight, you feared you might never be able to return to that place again. And I'm not a parent. I don't know how accurate that is, but I can understand that because I feel that way with my nieces 100%. Like when I am with them, it is the closest that I can get to a utopia. It is the closest that I can get to happiness and peace and security and safety, is seeing, literally when I look at my nieces, I see them as infants and I see them as they are now, and I see their future as well. And so I get that, and I thought it was so beautiful. And just going through all the different positions all of the women in this book are in, I thought this book did a really nice job of describing how fucking complex and nuanced it is to be a parent and try to do what's right, because everyone's definition of right is different. And this book was it really made you think. And it honestly focused a little bit too much on race for my personal liking, but I mean the book is really good. I definitely recommend it. I think everyone should read it. But that kind of brings me a little bit to lo malo of the episode. Elena trying to help Black people. She makes everything about her. When she finds out that Mia is the one who told the birth mom that Elena's friend was adopting the baby, she said that she knew Mia was a liar and said that that's why she needed to investigate her life. Like, she made Mia telling her friend that her baby was being adopted. She found a way to make it about her. How the fuck is that about you? How is that about you? I can't stand Elena. But I think I think it's also valuable and important and a good part of the book because it also makes you reflect on yourself. Like, as a white person, it makes you reflect on almost a mirror. Like, I see myself in her, and you makes you question what you do and why you do it, and white people and stuff. And I think that's really important. Like, I think that's what I liked about the book, was that it's Reese Witherspoon's character, Elena, she makes you question these things, whereas, in literature, you really don't. You only think of, you don't really think of, like, white people and their motives, And so I think that's why I really like this book, is that it explores that, and it goes into that a little bit. It obviously talks about the adoption ethics, and, throughout the book, they were saying that a single poor Chinese woman doesn't deserve to be a parent to her kid. Like, people were saying that in the book, certain characters, and it's just very classist to say that only people who can afford daycare or a stay-at-home parent are worthy of being parents. Like, if childcare was universal, then these poor parents wouldn't have to have such hardships. Like, why can't we just make it all affordable? Like, think about how fucked up that is. Only rich people can have kids. Like, if you think that only people who have money can have kids, then look at the pay gap between different demographics. And it is a racist thing to say when you look at the pay gap between people, because then what you're really saying, rich people, right? What percentage of the population is rich? It's all white people. So only white people can have kids? So who can't? Black people? That's eugenics. Like, that's racist. That is a racist thought. And I just love that it talked about it in an entertaining, fun way, like, through this book and then through the show too. I also really hated how, like, Lexi and Pearl's relationship, because they obviously get close. They're both, like, young girls. But Lexi, like, takes Pearl shopping, and it changes that dynamic. Like, when one person, the rich white person, is bestowing this gift of shopping onto the poor Black girl, it's no longer a balance. If you are doing this act of charity, right, for this person, and it shows, because even Pearl offers to write Lexi's college essay for her. Like, she's doing labor for her. And because she feels like she owes her. And so it adds to that power dynamic. Let's get into the Cheeseman a little bit. I didn't really want to look into it. But I feel like the show showed even more the tension between Mia and Elena, because you could have those facial expressions and the awkward pauses. Like in the book you can have that, but really seeing it in the show, if you haven't seen Little Fires Everywhere, at least watch the show. At least watch it, because I think it did a really good job. And, you know, I didn't remember that Pacey from Dawson's Creek, he's the dad in the show. He's Elena's husband, Reese Witherspoon's husband in the show. He's the lawyer. So that was really fun too. And I feel like that even just shows like it was the 90s. Like the show was based in the 90s. And during the 90s, Pacey was Pacey in Dawson's Creek. And so now we're in the show about the 90s and he's the dad. You know what I'm saying? Like it just adds to that nostalgia, like as a millennial. So I loved that. I thought that was a really nice touch, and just adds to like the depth of the show and like the creators. I'm a big fan. I'm a really big fan of the show and the book, if you haven't been able to tell. I want to read, this is the author's notes. She says, a letter from Celeste Ng. Dear readers, when I first began Little Fires Everywhere, I knew I wanted to write about my beloved hometown of Shaker Heights, Ohio. I started with a story about troubled families, the wealthy Richardsons and their complicated family dynamics, mysterious Mia and her daughter, and the secrets they all carried with them, and set the story in my hometown. Shaker Heights, I realized, is full of fascinating contradictions. It's a wealthy, highly regulated city, one of the first planned communities in the United States, and the belief in planning is so strong that the city even planned for diversity in everything from the appearance of its houses to the racial makeup of its population. It was founded on utopian principles and even today brims with idealism and a sense of exceptionalism. And despite all of this, of course, Shaker Heights still struggles with the same race and class issues as the rest of the nation. Like many places in our country, Shaker Heights is full of idealistic, altruistic people of all races who are good at heart and sincerely want to do the right thing. Yet, when personally affected by the issue, even idealists often end up making selfish choices with far-reaching effects. It's human nature, yet I wanted to explore how and how often we justify it to ourselves when we cross moral lines. Where do we follow the rules, and when do we justify breaking them? Do our pasts determine what we deserve in the future? And is it ever possible to leave your past behind? These are some of the questions I hope the novel raises. 100% it does. 100% it does, bitch. Deadass. Literally. 100%. And I think that, you know, it's that letter that she just wrote. There's more to it too, but it doesn't have to do with the book. It has to do with her other books. But I think that Elena's perfection, she was so irritated by Mia not being like that, her freedom and her not being shackled by expectations and these rules. She was envious of that. She was envious that Mia was able to follow her dreams and she could do whatever the fuck she wants, while Elena had to be a mom and this, you know, a journalist in this small town and be perfect and this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just think that the perfection it was too much. It was too much for her trying to live up to that. And so, great book. And the more I talk about it, honestly, I didn't think that I liked this book as much as I liked it. But here I am, obsessed with it. Celeste Ng, she also wrote Our Missing Hearts and Everything I Never Told You. I haven't read those. Her first novel, Everything I Never Told You, is about the tragedy of the Lee family in the 70s. In 1970s Ohio, Lydia, the seemingly perfect daughter, drowns, shattering the family's fragile peace. Each member embarks on a desperate search for answers, unraveling secrets, and exposing the cultural and familial tensions that led to this tragedy. As the youngest daughter, Hannah observes more than anyone realizes, holding the key to the truth. This is a moving story of family loss and the struggle of understanding within a fractured household. If I want to cry, maybe I'll read that book, but drowning, kids dying, I'm kind of good. I'm good on that. Today's book, Little Fires Everywhere, was her second novel. And then her third one, Our Missing Hearts, is about a dystopian America where a 12-year-old lives with his broken father, following strict laws targeting Asian Americans. After his mother, a dissident poet, vanishes, he receives a cryptic clue that leads him on a journey through an underground network to find her. This quest explores the power of art and the legacy we leave our children, and how hope survives in a broken world. I probably won't be reading that one because it reminds me too much of like the current state of the US, like banning books and prioritizing certain demographics and feelings over the safety and inclusion of other demographics. But yeah, I don't like that. Like, what's that other one? The one where it's like Blessed Be the Fruit. What's that show where they like wear the white cat capes? Handmaid's Tale. I'm good. I'm alright. Too many things overlap. This dystopian stuff really makes you reflect on like your current reality. I'm okay. I'm alright on those things. But anyways, the next episode will be on The Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarrows. If you liked this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. New episodes are uploaded on Monday mornings. I'm posting daily videos on YouTube, like I said earlier, recapping my everyday life. And you can also follow me on social media at Chicklit Podcast. And remember, if you have any book recommendations or want to be on the podcast, let me know. Thank you for listening. Bye.